Strength. It sounds noble, doesn't it? People say it like a compliment, like armor polished by admiration. You're so strong. They mean it kindly, as if it's something to be proud of. And most days, it is. You carry the weight of others with a smile that doesn't waver. You show up when you're tired, hold things together when everyone else falls apart. You've learned to fix, to endure, to rise. But somewhere along the way, being strong stopped feeling like a choice and started feeling like a sentence. Because when you're always the strong one, no one asks if you're okay. They assume you are. They forget that strength can hide a breaking point. The truth is, people who always need to be strong often come from quiet pain. Maybe it started long ago, when being soft wasn't safe, when showing emotion meant losing control. You learned that vulnerability made you a target, so you built walls made of composure and perfection. You became the responsible one, the calm one, the one others leaned on. And with every praise of, "You're so mature," or "You always handle things so well," the message sank deeper. Weakness is dangerous. Dependence is shameful. So, you taught yourself to carry everything alone. But here's what no one tells you about strength. It has a cost. The same armor that protects you also isolates you. It keeps others from seeing your humanity. It keeps you from resting. You start believing that if you stop being strong, everything will fall apart. That the world depends on your endurance. And so, you keep going, even when your body screams for rest. You keep smiling through heartbreak. You keep helping others even as your own hands tremble. Because stopping feels scarier than suffering. But behind that strength, there's a softness, buried, quiet, aching to be seen. It's the part of you that longs to collapse into someone's arms without having to explain or apologize. The part that wants to cry without being told you're inspiring. The part that doesn't want to be admired, just held. Because real strength isn't about never breaking. It's about finally allowing yourself to. People who always need to be strong often learn that love is conditional, that it must be earned through composure, competence, and control. Maybe they were the ones who had to grow up too fast, taking care of others before anyone took care of them. Maybe they were praised for their resilience when what they actually needed was rest. Over time, this survival skill turned into an identity. You stop seeing strength as a response and start believing it's who you are. You become addicted to holding it all together, even when no one is asking you to. Psychologists call this hyper-independence, a trauma response disguised as confidence. It's what happens when your nervous system associates dependence with danger. So you do everything yourself, not because you want to, but because you don't trust that anyone else will show up. When people offer help, you politely refuse. When someone asks if you're okay, you smile and say, "I'm fine." You've become so used to being the pillar that even the thought of leaning on someone feels wrong. Because somewhere deep down, you've internalized a terrifying belief. If you stop being strong, you'll become a burden. But strength, in this form, isn't freedom. It's captivity. You live in a constant state of tension, afraid to exhale. You perform strength so convincingly that even your closest friends believe it. You've built a life on reliability, on keeping everything neat and contained. But inside, you're exhausted. You've confused control with safety and numbness with peace. And the worst part, you don't even know how to stop, because vulnerability feels like chaos to someone who's lived their life in survival mode. The irony is that people who seem the strongest often carry the deepest fragility, not because they're weak, but because they've spent years suppressing every natural human need: comfort, dependence, rest, softness. They've become so used to managing the storms of others that they've forgotten how to acknowledge their own. And the world, enamored by their strength, rarely gives them permission to feel. So, they keep performing, keep enduring, keep being the strong one, until the weight becomes too much to bear. When strength becomes your identity, you stop, recognizing the difference between endurance and emotional paralysis. You call it discipline, but it's actually fear. Fear of unraveling, fear of needing too much, fear of letting someone see the chaos underneath your calm. You've built a life around control because control feels like safety. Every plan, every routine, every self-imposed rule becomes a way to keep your pain at bay. But the human heart wasn't designed for permanent armor. It needs air. It needs softness. It needs space to tremble and still be loved. There's a psychological concept called emotional suppression, and it's exactly what it sounds like: the habitual avoidance of vulnerability. Studies show that people who suppress their emotions under the guise of strength experience higher levels of anxiety, physical tension, and even heart-related illness. Because what you silence doesn't vanish, it reroutes. It turns into headaches, fatigue, numbness. It leaks through the cracks in your composure in moments when you least expect it. A small comment can sting like rejection. A minor mistake can trigger shame. You don't break down dramatically. You erode quietly. The tragedy is that people who always need to be strong often admire vulnerability in others. They'll comfort, support, and hold space for everyone, except themselves. Because somewhere deep down, they believe their worth is tied to being unshakable. They confuse being dependable with being invincible, so even when they crave help, they can't ask for it. They don't know how to be cared for without feeling guilty about it. They'll apologize for crying, for resting, for simply being human. And this is where the cycle deepens. Because when you never show weakness, people stop offering softness. They assume you don't need it. You become the safe harbor for everyone else, but never find one yourself. You carry emotional loads that were never yours to hold, quietly drowning under the weight of your own expectations. But no one sees it, because strength is a perfect disguise. And as long as you wear it, no one will think to look beneath. At some point, the performance of strength starts to collapse under its own weight. You wake up one day and realize you've been carrying everyone for so long that you don't remember what it feels like to simply be. You don't even recognize your own exhaustion until it hits you in the quiet moments. When the world slows down and there's no one left to save, no task to complete, no crisis to manage. That's when the loneliness sets in. Not the kind that comes from being alone, but the kind that comes from being unseen. Because when everyone sees you as the strong one, no one thinks to ask where you hurt. It's easy to forget that strength, without rest, turns into brittleness. You can only suppress your softness for so long before it starts to harden into something else. Irritability, numbness, emptiness. You start feeling detached from the people you love, even though you're doing everything right. You're dependable, you're helpful, you're composed, but inside you feel like a ghost in your own life. The body goes through the motions, but the soul feels missing. That's not strength, that's survival on autopilot. Psychologists call this chronic self-reliance burnout. It happens when the nervous system is stuck in a state of doing, unable to relax, unable to receive. Your brain, conditioned to equate stillness with danger, keeps pushing forward even when you're safe. You can't rest because rest feels like failure. You can't ask for help because you've mistaken need for weakness. But the truth is, even the strongest trees break without wind to bend them. Flexibility, not resistance, is what keeps things alive. And healing begins when you stop performing strength and start reclaiming your softness. When you let the tears fall without apologizing. When you admit, maybe for the first time, that you're tired, not because you're weak, but because you've been strong for far too long. That moment isn't collapse, it's surrender. And surrender is where real strength is born. Not in holding everything together, but in finally letting something go. And then comes the quiet transformation. The moment you realize that true strength was never about how much you could carry, but how deeply you could feel. You begin to see that your worth isn't measured by endurance, or by how little you need, or by how much you can hold together for others. Real strength is gentler, softer, more honest. It's crying when something hurts instead of swallowing it. It's asking for help without shame. It's saying, I can't do this right now, and letting that be enough. You start to understand that vulnerability doesn't weaken you. It humanizes you. It brings you closer to others in ways perfection never could. Because no one connects through your mask of strength. They connect through your cracks. The moment you show what's real, something miraculous happens. People stop admiring you and start relating to you. They put down their own armor too. And suddenly, the world feels less lonely. There's a kind of peace that comes when you stop needing to prove how strong you are. You realize that being soft doesn't erase your power. It refines it. It makes it kinder. Strong people don't just endure storms. They also know when to step out of the rain. They know that rest is not retreat, that asking for help is not failure, and that admitting pain is not surrender. It's courage in its truest form. So, if you're someone who always feels the need to be strong, remember this: strength that costs you your peace isn't strength at all. It's survival. You deserve a life that doesn't require constant holding together. You deserve to be supported, to be seen, to fall apart and still be loved. Because strength was never supposed to be a mask. It was meant to be a heartbeat, soft, steady, and alive.